Hey, Suave here. First of all, big thank you to my one-off Ko-fi supporters last month. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you like the content. And thanks to all my new subscribers, too. I didn't think there'd be so many of you, but I'm glad to have you on board. Today, I'm going to share how I play solo. This isn't exactly a guide or anything. I'm just really curious how it compares to the way everyone else plays. Real quick, I wanted to touch on the social aspect of being a solo player, since so many of you had your own opinions and experiences in response to my first video. I think solo has its own meaning for everybody, but for me, it means that I don't have to log in with the intention of interacting with others in order to make progress. Not to say I'm reclusive. I'll gladly chat with buddies I've made if we cross paths, but I don't attend events, I don't join statics. I just have a low social battery, and wholly dedicating my game time to others can be exhausting. Not all the time, but can be. It's obviously my opinion that there isn't any one way to play this game, or any game, or that any playstyle is ever going to be better than the other, especially when it isn't breaking the rules set by the developers. It really just comes down to who you are as a person, and how you prefer to play the game. I consider myself a very casual player, but ultimately, I'm just happy to be here. Anyway, let's get into it. Unless I was running MSQ, and I'm not in a location that's easily traveled back and forth to, I typically try to start and end my days at the Cloud9 in Ishgard. Obviously, this means a bit of traveling, so when we wake up, I check on the free company actions right away. Since my FC is relatively inactive, I was given permission to use the actions whenever I needed them, as long as I maintain them in the available list. So it's off to our grand company in Gridania. I'll do a few things, aside from repurchasing whatever actions I may have just used. I recently started checking my gear for materia, which can extract every time gear hits 100% spirit bond. Once I finish with that, I'll turn in green gear for company seals, which I use to purchase ventures for my retainers. Blue gear turns in for more, but I typically don't need that many seals, so I desynth the better gear instead. Those mats I either hold on to for my own crafting later on, or sell on the market board for other crafters. Before I leave the Grand Company though, I check on my squadron. I either assign them a training or another squadron mission, but really I'm just leveling them up so I can eventually get a higher rank with the Grand Company and get access to more items. It's also fun practice for me to go on command missions with them. Not only do I get to experience them at my own pace, but it makes me feel a bit like a mentor, guiding the NPCs through it like sprouts. Next, we run to the market, checking in on my retainers to get their hauls and sending them off on their next ventures. If I know I'll be on and off throughout the day, I'll do the short trips. Otherwise, I'll just pop them on another long haul and see them tomorrow. This is where we potentially hit one of my first personal quests for the day, upgrading retainer gear. If they've outgrown their current gear by about 10 levels, I head to the nearest market that fits them and pick up new gear for them. It's an investment, but it means they'll be able to go out on better ventures, so it seems worth it to me. After that, I'll check my challenge log to see what's up. Anything small that I can knock out, or just anything that jumps out as fun. Usually this means a trip to the saucer, checking for any gate that isn't leap, and some minigames. Or even running a few dungeons before a little more progress on Endwalker MSQ. Now that I mention it, it also wouldn't be uncommon to catch me intermittently AFK throughout the day, because I'll definitely jump a lot between my work and my personal projects while coming back to the game for my 10-minute breaks. But that doesn't bother me or anything, it's just how I get things done nowadays. That's another reason I can't commit to longer-term social things like statics or raiding or role-playing events anymore. I have too much going on most of the time and I just can't sit down to focus on it. but there is a rare occasion where my inner demon decides to hyperfixate instead. I'm pretty sure one of my crafters went from 0 to 50 in a single afternoon once, thanks to another user's online guide that helped me expedite the process. But I'm always pulling up guides, regardless. And the tooltips are my best friends. I'm constantly reading them to make sure I'm using my abilities correctly, or even checking rotation guides to make sure I'm being optimal, even if I'm only playing for myself in trusted dungeons. A few of you wanted to know my favorite NPCs, and clearly Heaven's Ward is a core memory, so most of them come from that. I'd like to give a shout out to someone much smaller. Our little kobold boy, Gabu. Without going into detail, I really relate to Gabu's subplot. It was so heartbreaking and inspiring to watch Alice never give up on him, to the point of helping him through what is essentially his grief. He only has a few quests and a few cutscenes, but he had such a huge impact on me at that particular time in my life. Characters like that are what make the world feel alive to me. That you can visit an old friend and others are still mourning him too. Or even silly moments like finding a recruit in a tight spot. Like, do you need help? How can I help you? There's just something so immersive about the smaller stories and lesser known characters being affected by the tragedies of the world. Of course, there are plots or cutscenes I don't prefer to sit through, but just because they aren't for me doesn't mean that they aren't meant for someone else. As a side note, I love the Kikirin. They remind me so much of the Burmesians in Final Fantasy IX and how much I adored Freya Crescent. But I think that's a topic for another time. Listing my favorite places is a lot harder to nail down. But I do like trying to find the one spot everywhere I go that I like the most. Typically it's a tucked away place, or an overlook with a wide open view of the landscape. This includes dungeons too. The blue sands of Cutter's Cry, with the glowing flowers in a cool, quiet cave, or the brilliant fields of Ilmeg, muted by the crisp air of beautiful foggy mornings. There's just so much to see. Maybe I'll take y'all on a road trip around Eorzea someday. Someone else asked what my favorite activities were, but really I'm all over the place just based on what seems interesting at the time. Lately, I've been preparing to run Palace of the Dead. There's also a guide I've been following for that too, but if anyone has any recommendations or their own success in soloing for the Lonely Explorer title, I'd love to hear how you did it. I was also asked about my favorite music, but I don't want this video to be longer than it is, so I decided to wrap it all up in a top hits on a Spotify playlist. I'll link it down below. And for the sake of not being here all day, it's probably time to wrap this up. I'll save anything else for another time. So when it is time to log out for the day, I'll head back to an inn and I'll try to remember to mend my gear before heading to a room. Throughout the day, I've probably sent my retainers on a few ventures, so I send them out on a final long expedition and hit the hay. The same typically goes for Sanu. On the days I just feel like fishing or G-posing, she generally has the same routine. The biggest difference is that Sanu has her own apartment to go home to. My approach is extremely casual nowadays. I know there are plenty of things I could be missing, or that I just don't feel the need to do. That may make my process slow, but it works for me. And I'm sure this wasn't exactly the video some of you were expecting, but honestly, I'm still figuring all this out. Let me know how different your routines are, or what coordinates you'd like to see on an Eorzean road trip. I'm gonna try to keep this stuff ad-free, so if you like what I'm up to and want to support what I'm doing, my Ko-fi link is in the description. Thank you again to my one-off supporters and to all the new subscribers who came aboard this tin can. I'm happy you're here. And I hope everyone has a good holiday and a good new year. See ya.